Howdy friends, we're back with History on the Loose. Just a few short months ago, John Townsend over at Townsend's YouTube site did a great piece on making oilcloth. And he beat me by a couple of weeks. I had it planned, but my technology kind of went out on me, and it's been a while since you've seen me. I didn't have access to a decent camera, and life got in the way. So here I am, as promised, with another video, and I told a few people in the comment section over there that I was going to be making an oilcloth video eventually, and here we are today. We're going to do that. So, a few thoughts on oilcloth. There are some recipes that will call for a 50-50 mixture. I've seen a lot of videos that were made within the last 5 years or so. There was a huge influx of YouTube videos about making oilcloth or oil skin. I prefer to think of it as cloth. Using this 50-50 mixture of linseed oil and mineral spirits. I have used turpentine as well, with the same degree of success. However, there are certain characteristics that I particularly don't care for with that process, with those results. And that's just resulting from my experience, and that's all I can talk about. There's also the added ingredient of pigmentation. So you're actually creating more of a paint by adding pigments to it. A very common one, both in these recent videos and historically, was iron oxide, rust. Iron oxide is a very cheap, very easily obtained item, so adding that to your linseed oil made a paint of sorts, which had very great sealing capabilities. However, iron oxide being alkaline, when you mix it with an oil like linseed oil, it creates a very rudimentary, a basic soap. And my results with that have been less than favorable for my needs. I'll show you an example. A lot of these videos that have been made, and a lot of the examples that many YouTubers have been showing, all of these were made within the last 5 years, or 7 years, let's say. I have an example of a rain poncho that I made over 25 years ago, and it was just basic canvas that I hemmed and put the neck slit in, tacked it to my barn wall, and painted with straight linseed oil. It took quite a while for it to dry, to cure. It stayed gummy and gooey for quite some time, but after a couple, 3 short months, it was fine to use. The smell took a little bit longer than that to go away, but if you're a wood crafter or a do-it-yourselfer, you might think that's a pleasant smell. I do. I like the smell. It reminds me of my youth. I've been using linseed oil on handles, tool handles, and any kind of wood project that I make here around the ranch since I was a boy. We've been using linseed oil on all our tool handles since before I can remember. It nourishes the wood, and it makes it stronger, it makes it harder. So that'll come into play a little bit later in our talk here. So on my poncho, I used it for quite a number of seasons, rainy seasons, and one time I put it away, it might have had a little bit of moisture on it, so it got a little bit of mold, and when I discovered it, I put it in the sun, the mold died, and it just left spots. Never once did it affect the water repellency qualities of it. And again, this is a water repellent. I don't consider it a waterproofing, because I think that unless it's a solid membrane such as latex or leather or metal, it is porous to a certain degree. It has fibers in it, so I can't call it waterproof. Water will permeate Eventually, it has to. There's no two ways about it. It has fibers, so it will permeate. It's just very high quality of water repellency. And I've never had a leak in any of my products that I've made using this type of linseed oil based finish on it. So I'll show you my my poncho that I made, and I haven't unrolled this in a few months, so it's a little stiff, and the weather's been a little bit cool lately. Not cool enough. We're having some terribly dry weather, but it's been cooling off lately here in Southern California. So when I made this, it as I said, I just painted that oil on pretty thick. You can probably see a little bit of the spotting from those past mold marks. The quality was very water repellent. The color was a very rich, shall we say, dark urine color. Hey, quit laughing in the back there. And it stayed that way for years. Now, one of the qualities of linseed oil is that it will darken the wood over time. The wood handle that you put it on, or whatever, with these oil treatments, it will darken the wood. And as you can see, that rich urine color has now turned quite dark, but the water repellency is still 100%. And you can see it sticks together. I haven't had this unrolled in maybe 2 or 3 years. I haven't needed it. But when I tested it just before this, I unrolled a little bit of it and put water. It still is, if you want to get a close-up here, Mrs. History on the loose. It's still just like a modern raincoat. And the slit in it is in the center. And there you go. So although this looks like it had some type of pigmentation in it, it had none. And that's 25 years old and still works as well as it did the first year it was made. So that's living proof that this stuff will last. It will not fall apart, in my experience, when it's just the straight linseed oil. Now, maybe about 15 years ago or so, 12 to 15 years ago, I took a very large, a 12 by 12 canvas, hand sewed all the reinforcements, all the loops into it, and took that up on the roof of the house. Since it's a shingle roof, I figured if I'm going to be putting some oil down and it's going to bleed out, might as well go into some wood and strengthen that. So I used a 50-50 turpentine linseed oil mixture on that, and I made 2 batches. One batch with iron oxide, which isn't really red, it's more of a brown, and a red pigmentation, and these were both concrete pigments. So that tarp served me well until it reached some kind of critical point. I have no idea what the lifespan was dictated by this treatment, and it just started to tear. Now, it's been outside doing absolutely nothing, but what you're gonna see is pretty much what started happening. When it was ready to go, it just went. This is still the raw edge that was still from when it was new, and I mean, that's like tearing paper. So my guess is the only time I've ever had that happen was a result of that mixture with the pigments. So I'm not so sure if that rudimentary soap chemistry there had anything to do with that, but the only difference between the poncho and the tarp, they were both canvas, both linseed oil, was the added turpentine and pigmentation. The straight linseed oil is still functioning after easily 25 years, if not more, and the other one broke down after about 7 to 8 years. So now what we're going to do, we're going to real quickly, because we're running out of light, we're going to quickly make a new oilcloth, and we're just going to use a queen sheet. A lot of these folks on YouTube have been using Egyptian cotton sheets. Alright, if you can find them cheaply, that's great. What I did, I went down to the local church thrift store type place, and they had a box of queen sheets. They almost looked like they would have been from some type of a facility, but they were washed, they smelled great, they were clean, and they were in great shape. They had a little bit of lace work on them, so I had to undo that by hand because they didn't want that to come off. It was a evil little stitch they put on it. But anyway, it comes out to queen. It's 100% cotton. And the way I look at stuff when I'm going to do an oilcloth, and I've done quite a number of oilcloth treatments, is I'll look through it. And if I can see light coming through the threads, whether it's canvas or sheet or anything like that, then I won't go for it. First I got to see no light coming through between the threads. Pardon me. Now, what I'll also do, I'll wash it on as hot as I can, or if I can't wash it, if it won't fit in the machine because it's a bigger tarp, I'll boil a big pot of water and put it in there for a little bit. I want to shrink those fibers as much as I can. I want to tighten it up, tighten those fibers to make it even more to where the light doesn't pass through. So we're just going to get a bucket. We're going to make it easy. Just some Tidy Cat bucket I just got out the barn. Again, I buy linseed oil by the gallon. I use quite a bit of it. This one's been around for a while. There's a little bit missing out the top of it, so you can see how it's a little darker. So we'll start it off like this here. Put about half in there. And then usually I paint it on. Usually I paint, but this dunk method works just as good, maybe even faster. So all the YouTube videos that they have on this process, pretty much this is just a copy of it. It's no different. It's like making a video on washing dishes. There's not a whole lot of difference in washing dishes from one house to the next. Put this in there, let it soak up, let it drip out, and put it out to dry.